The stars stretched across the sky like glimmering threads of an endless tapestry. Yet, despite their beauty, Elise Carrington couldn't focus on the comforting sight. She was on the bridge of Earth's most advanced defense ship, the Avenger, and there was nothing comforting about the news she had just received. The Galactic Empire, a vast, seemingly invincible power from beyond the stars, was coming, and they were coming for Earth. General Carrington had always been the optimist, the one who believed that humanity would overcome any obstacle. She'd seen it happen before, during the Great Wars, the plague of the rising seas, the ravaging asteroid storms. But nothing had prepared her for this. "General, we have confirmed the trajectory," said Lieutenant Harris, his voice tight with fear. He turned to the hollow table in the center of the room, his fingers tapping rapidly on the console. "The Empire's fleet is approximately 6 days from Earth. We've intercepted a series of encrypted transmissions. The scale of their approach is staggering." Carrington pressed her palms against the cold surface of the table, studying the projections. The holographic image before her showed a series of enormous ships descending on Earth, thousands of them, each larger than anything humanity had ever created. The Empire's fleet had traveled across countless light years, and they were about to reach Earth. "Any idea of their intentions?" Carrington asked, her voice as calm as she could make it, though inside, her mind was racing. "None," Harris replied, his tone bleak. "We've tried to decrypt their comms, but they're beyond our technology. They've left a single message, but it doesn't make sense. It's a warning, General." A cold shiver ran down Carrington's spine. She had been trained for combat, for strategy, for the art of war, but she had never been trained for something like this. The message flashed across the hollow table. "You have been found. Your world will belong to the Galactic Empire. Surrender now or face annihilation." Simple, direct, and chilling. No demands, no terms. Just a stark ultimatum. Carrington felt her hands tighten into fists. "Do we know anything about their capabilities?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Harris hesitated. "Not much. The fleet is too advanced, their ships too powerful. But we've been able to make some assumptions based on the trajectory and size of their vessels. And those assumptions are, sure, they could wipe out all human civilization in a single strike," Harris said, his voice almost a whisper. "Their technology is generations ahead of ours. If they wanted to, they could destroy Earth without even landing." Carrington took a deep breath. She had to focus, she had to think, because Earth didn't have time for fear. "We can't surrender," she said, her voice sharp. "That's not an option. We fight." "We don't have the firepower to fight them directly, General," Harris countered, a note of panic in his voice. "Our entire combined global defense fleet is far outmatched. We're not even close to their level of technology." Carrington turned her gaze to the view outside the window. The stars twinkled in the blackness of space, and for a moment, she allowed herself a brief moment of weakness. How had it come to this? Humanity had barely made a dent in its own solar system, and now it was going to be tested by a galactic empire. But that was not the way she would face this challenge. She had fought in wars before, but this was different. The stakes had never been so high. "We have to find something," Carrington said firmly, her mind already working through every possibility. "Something they don't expect. Maybe there's a weakness or a gap in their defenses." Lieutenant Harris nodded, though he clearly had his doubts. "I'll get to work, General, but we'll need more time." The Earth's last hope. As the days passed, the global defense efforts ramped up. Every nation on Earth put aside their differences, recognizing that humanity's survival depended on unity. The United Defense Coalition, UDC, formed in the wake of the asteroid crisis years earlier, now became the central hub for all military operations and research. Carrington's office, located deep within a subterranean complex in the Rocky Mountains, became the nerve center of all Earth's efforts. Alongside her trusted advisors, she reviewed the latest intelligence reports, scoured data for any potential weakness in the Empire's fleet, and worked tirelessly to prepare humanity for the inevitable conflict. Yet, despite all the preparations, the sense of dread that hung over them all could not be shaken. Earth's technology, while advanced in its own right, was utterly outclassed by what they were up against. The Empire's ships were designed for domination. Everything humanity had built, from its greatest military assets to its most advanced AI systems, seemed insignificant in comparison. It was in the midst of these preparations that Carrington received a call from an unlikely source, Dr. Noah Weber, an astrophysicist and cryptographer who had been studying the strange energy patterns detected from the Empire's fleet. He had been quiet about his findings up until now, but as Carrington answered the call, she could see the look of determination in his eyes. "General," Weber began, his voice urgent, "I think I've discovered something that could change everything." Carrington leaned forward, her attention piqued. "Go on, Dr. Weber, what have you found?" Weber hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I've been analyzing the Empire's transmissions. They've been sending encrypted signals at regular intervals, and I believe I've cracked part of their code. I'm not sure exactly what it means yet, but it seems to suggest they're not invulnerable. There's a vulnerability in their communications system." Carrington's heart skipped a beat. "Are you saying we can exploit it?" "It's possible," Weber replied, his voice filled with both excitement and caution. "If we can find the right frequency and deliver a sufficiently powerful signal, we might be able to disrupt their communications, disable their weapons, even scramble their entire fleet." A flicker of hope ignited in Carrington's chest. "How long do we have to prepare something like this?" "Weeks at best," Weber answered. "We'll need to work with every available engineer, every scientist we have. This is going to be complicated, but it's the only shot we've got." Carrington glanced around at the people in the room with her, her advisors, the best minds humanity had to offer. They were all in the same boat, struggling to hold on to the belief that Earth could win this fight. But now, for the first time in days, Carrington felt a glimmer of something she hadn't dared to hope for, the possibility of victory. "We'll do it," Carrington said decisively. "We'll assemble the best team we have and make it work. This is our chance, Dr. Weber. Earth's survival depends on it." A dangerous plan. In the following days, Carrington's command center became a flurry of activity. Scientists and engineers from around the globe were called to the facility to assist Dr. Weber in developing a plan. The idea was to build a device, a transmission array, capable of emitting a signal strong enough to penetrate the Empire's defenses and disrupt their entire fleet. It was a gamble, and everyone knew it. Dr. Weber and his team worked around the clock to develop the device. It would require an enormous amount of energy, enough to rival the output of a small star. But that was the price of defying an empire of this scale. The hope was that the signal would be able to disrupt the Empire's communication systems long enough for Earth to mount a counteroffensive. Carrington met with the various commanders of Earth's remaining forces. "We don't know how long we'll have once this signal is activated," she said. "This will be a window of opportunity, our only chance to strike back. We have to be ready for anything." In the meantime, the Empire had been issuing more messages, each one more condescending than the last, reminding Earth of its inevitable fate. Yet Carrington couldn't shake the feeling that the Empire didn't fully understand the strength of the people they were about to face. "We might not have their technology," Carrington said in one briefing, "but we have something they don't: determination. Our people have faced extinction before and survived. We will do so again." Despite the enormity of the task before them, the UDC pressed on. For every new report from the Empire's fleet, Earth's forces rallied stronger, their resolve unshaken. But as the days ticked away and the final preparations were made, Carrington couldn't help but feel the weight of the unknown. It was one thing to know a fight was coming. It was another to know that this fight would determine the future of humanity. The countdown begins. The day arrived faster than Carrington expected. Dr. Weber's device was ready. The transmission array had been constructed, its components integrated into the Earth defense satellite orbiting just outside Earth's atmosphere. Carrington's fingers brushed against the surface of the table, feeling the weight of the decision she was about to make. "Is it ready?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her. "It's ready, General," Weber replied. "Once we send the signal, we won't get another chance. It will either work or it will fail." Carrington nodded. "Do it, and pray it worked." With a final command, the signal was sent, and Earth's only warning to the Galactic Empire was given. A message they would never forget. Scout, the first time the human race truly understood the magnitude of its existence in the universe, it was a quiet realization, like waking from a deep, uneasy sleep to find the world larger and more dangerous than expected. No one ever anticipated how fragile their place in the cosmos truly was. Yet, just as humanity had begun to reach the farthest edges of their own solar system, something darker, far more powerful, had taken notice. For years, Earth's leaders had brushed off warnings of an impending galactic storm, assuming that such threats were nothing more than whispered rumors among fringe theorists and paranoid astronomers. But all that changed the moment the Galactic Empire made its presence known. God bless Our Lady of Lan. By now, General Elise Carrington, head of Earth's United Defense Coalition, UDC, had become familiar with the symptoms of the oncoming storm. The mysterious signs in the stars, strange energy bursts in the dark corners of the galaxy, and the cryptic signals that seemed to echo from the very edges of the universe itself. Despite every technological advance humanity had made, despite the immense strides they'd taken to explore and colonize the stars, nothing could have prepared them for the sheer scale of the Empire's advance. On the Avenger, the flagship of Earth's defense fleet, General Carrington stood at the command center, scanning the holographic projections of the incoming fleet. Each of the projections looked more like a nightmare than something tangible. Thousands of dark ships, some the size of cities, others the size of continents, were headed directly toward Earth. She had seen data, heard whispers of the Empire's power, but now it was real. In her mind, Elise had already faced down countless challenges: wars, insurrections, resource shortages, the occasional rogue asteroid. But this was different, and she knew it. The silence in the command center was unbearable, punctuated only by the low hum of the machinery around them. The last few weeks had felt like a fever dream, a slow major disaster, as Earth scrambled to mobilize its military forces, coordinate across governments, and rally its scientists and engineers to find any way to fight back. And yet the news had not improved. Earth's forces were vastly outclassed. All their technologies, from their most advanced weapons to their artificial intelligence systems, felt primitive compared to what was approaching from the depths of space. "General," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice strained, "the fleet has entered the final phase of its trajectory. They're a mere 6 days out now." Carrington turned to face him, her eyes sharp with determination. "Any communication from them?" Harris nodded grimly. "Yes. We've intercepted a message. It's the same one they've been broadcasting to every species they've encountered. No changes." Carrington's chest tightened. The message had come through in every language known to humanity, translated instantly by the AI systems they had spent years perfecting. But the message itself was simple, unrelenting, and terrifying. "You have been found. Your world will belong to the Galactic Empire. Surrender now, or face annihilation." The words echoed in Carrington's mind. There was no negotiation, no request for diplomacy. It wasn't a threat. It was a decree, and Earth had only one option: survive. She turned to the tactical officer, Commander Valen, a no-nonsense officer from the Martian colonies who had earned her place at Carrington's side. "Now, report," Carrington demanded. "We're tracking their fleet," Commander Valen said, her voice cutting through the tension in the room. "We've determined their position, but we have no idea what weapons they're capable of. All we know is that the Empire has eradicated entire civilizations in the past without firing a single shot." Carrington clenched her jaw, thinking. Every plan they'd formulated so far had been for nothing. Earthbound defense systems were too weak. Military strategies had all been outdated by the Empire's overwhelming power. There was nothing they could do that would make a difference. But in the back of her mind, a new thought began to form. Something different. Perhaps the key to humanity's survival wasn't found in brute force, but in intelligence, in subversion. If they could not outgun the Empire, perhaps they could outthink it. "Are there any vulnerabilities we can exploit?" Carrington asked, her voice steady. Harris looked hesitant, his face pale. "We've scoured every possible data source. They're far beyond us in technology. We've identified weak points in their communications systems, but nothing else." "Nothing else?" Carrington repeated, frowning. She could feel the pressure building, but she refused to let panic set in. What if their technology depends on their communications? What if we could disrupt them? There was a brief silence in the command center as the team exchanged glances. Then Lieutenant Harris spoke up, his eyes narrowing in thought. "Disrupting their communications might work, General. If we can intercept and jam their signal, it could give us a window of opportunity. But we would need to exploit it within hours. The Empire's ships are fast and would likely adapt quickly to any interference." Carrington stood still, absorbing the information. She'd spent her career preparing for the worst. This was it. The worst was here. And humanity's only hope was to try and exploit this weakness, no matter how small it seemed. "We'll need a team to work on this. I want the best cryptographers, the brightest engineers, and the top scientists on this project," Carrington ordered. "If there's any chance of taking them down, it's going to be through a coordinated global effort. We can't waste a single moment." Within the hour, Carrington was joined by Dr. Noah Weber, a brilliant astrophysicist who had been tracking strange energy fluctuations in the deep reaches of space for the past decade. It was Weber's research that had first pointed to the arrival of the Empire, though no one had taken him seriously at first. Now, as the weight of their reality settled in, Weber had become a key player in the struggle for Earth's survival. "I have something," Weber said, his voice almost a whisper as he entered Carrington's office. "It's an idea, not fully tested yet, but it's our best shot." Carrington turned to him, her expression weary but hopeful. "What is it?" "I've been looking at the encrypted transmissions the Empire has been sending. We thought their encryption was unbreakable, but it's not. It's complex, yes, but there's a pattern to it, a regularity," Weber said, pacing back and forth. "I think I can crack it." Carrington leaned forward, her mind racing. "If you can break their code, we can find their weak point. We could disrupt their entire fleet." Weber paused, glancing at the holographic map of the incoming fleet. "That's the hope. If we can access their main comm systems, we can send out a signal strong enough to disrupt their ship's internal systems, communications, weapons targeting, even navigation. It won't be permanent, but it could buy us enough time to retaliate." Carrington's pulse quickened. The idea was both reckless and brilliant, a gamble that could either turn the tide of the war or seal humanity's doom. But it was all they had. She knew what she had to do. "We'll need to assemble a team immediately," she said. "You'll have all the resources you need. Just make sure you're ready before they arrive." The race against time. The clock was ticking. As the days passed, the UDC mobilized. Every available engineer, scientist, and technician was summoned to the Arctic Circle, where Earth's most advanced defense satellite was being retrofitted to accommodate the new transmission technology. Dr. Weber's plan was simple. They would build a device capable of emitting a signal strong enough to disrupt the Empire's fleet. The device had to be ready in a matter of days, but that was the best they could do. If the Empire's ships were as fast and efficient as they seemed, their window of opportunity would be measured in hours. They broke through and evacuated no one but themselves. All eyes were now on the exit. Carrington's days were consumed with briefings, strategy meetings, and updates on the progress of the device. But even as the pieces fell into place, a gnawing fear remained at the back of her mind. Could they really pull this off? Could humanity truly strike back against an empire that seemed all but invincible? The final test came on the eve of the Empire's arrival. The transmission device was ready. It was housed in a satellite stationed in Earth's orbit, hidden behind the magnetic fields of the Earth itself. The engineers and cryptographers worked feverishly to encode the signal, adjusting frequencies, and ensuring that it would be powerful enough to have an effect. "We'll have one shot at this," Dr. Weber said, as he oversaw the final calibration of the equipment. "If we can't get the frequency right, it won't work. And if it doesn't work, we might not get a second chance." Carrington looked out at the vast, unyielding stars. The Empire was coming, and Earth's future hung in the balance. She turned to her team, feeling the weight of leadership settle onto her shoulders. "We've prepared for this moment. Now we see if our plan will work." The final countdown to the signal began. The fleet was now only 3 days from Earth, but Carrington knew the fate of the world was already sealed. All they had left to do was deliver their message, and hope against hope that the Empire would listen. The days had bled together in a haze of planning, building, and preparing for a future that seemed impossibly fragile. In the depths of Earth's military facilities, within the towering walls of the Avenger, General Elise Carrington had barely slept. The tension in the command center was palpable as the final stages of humanity's last-ditch effort to fight back against the Galactic Empire were put into motion. A coalition of engineers, military commanders, and scientists had poured their collective genius into the hope that somehow their one plan, the disruption of the Empire's fleet, would succeed. And it was a fragile hope at best. As Earth's most advanced defense ship, the Avenger stood poised to lead the global fleet into a battle no one had ever expected, much less hoped for. A battle against a power so vast, so unstoppable, that even their best weapons seemed laughable in comparison. Still, the clock was ticking. Carrington stood at the helm of the ship's command center, watching the vast projection of Earth's skies. The incoming ships, each one a harbinger of doom, had grown closer with every passing minute. Each of those ships represented an unimaginable force, a collective will bent on absorbing everything in its path. "We're within 3 days, General," said Commander Valen, her voice tight with anxiety. The cold, metallic tone of the comms equipment did nothing to dampen the rising panic in the air. "We've activated the defense satellite. Dr. Weber's team has completed the final adjustments. The signal is ready." Carrington nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. There was nothing more to be done now except wait. Earth had done everything it could. "And the fleet?" she asked, glancing at the star map that hovered over the table in front of her. "Ready to engage," Valen replied. "But our weapons are useless against the Empire's ships. They're too powerful. We'll be relying on the signal, General. It's our only shot." Carrington looked toward the view of Earth from the observation window. The sun glinted off the surface of the planet below, casting long, sweeping shadows across the land. Earth was beautiful, but it was also incredibly vulnerable. It was a planet of contradictions, a world of peace that was about to be thrust into the most violent conflict it had ever known. "We'll make them regret underestimating humanity," Carrington muttered, more to herself than anyone else. The quiet before the storm. Hours passed, each minute stretching longer than the last. Carrington paced back and forth in the command center. She was a soldier at heart, forged in the crucible of countless battles. Yet this fight was different. It wasn't just a fight for territory or resources. It wasn't even a fight for survival, as much as it was a fight for humanity's place in the cosmos. She knew the story of the Galactic Empire, though it was little more than a collection of rumors and fragmented reports. The Empire had been expanding for millennia, absorbing and obliterating civilizations in its wake. Entire species had been swallowed by the Empire's relentless expansion, their histories and cultures erased from existence. Earth was just another insignificant speck of dust in the grand design of the galaxy, or so they thought. Carrington's eyes flicked back to the data projections on the screen. The Empire's ships were now mere hours away. The final preparations for the signal were nearly complete, but Carrington couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The transmission array had been installed on the satellite, but what if it wasn't enough? What if the Empire was more advanced than they'd realized? The Empire had the ability to destroy entire star systems without even engaging in direct combat. What chance did Earth have? Her thoughts were interrupted by the shrill sound of an incoming transmission. Lieutenant Harris rushed to her side, his expression strained. "General," Harris said, breathless, "it's another message from the Empire." Carrington's blood ran cold. They had hoped that the messages would stop once Earth had made its preparations, but it seemed the Empire was not going to let humanity go without a final reminder of who held the power. She stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as the message appeared on the holoprojector. This time, the message was not in the usual cryptic code, but in clear, chilling language. It flashed before them in an imposing, cold font. "Resistance is futile. You will be eradicated. Surrender now, and your species may live in servitude. Refuse, and we will erase you from the galaxy." It was the same ultimatum they had received earlier, only more direct, more threatening. Carrington clenched her fists, her jaw tightening. The Empire's arrogance was sickening. They viewed humanity as insignificant, disposable. But they didn't know Earth. They didn't know the lengths to which humanity would go to survive. "I won't surrender," Carrington said, her voice calm but resolute. "Prepare the fleet. We have one chance, and we're taking it." The signal is sent. The final hours before the Empire's arrival were a blur. Carrington issued commands to the fleet, coordinating every ship's movement in preparation for the moment they would strike. The final step was simple, a powerful electromagnetic signal, one that could jam the Empire's communications long enough for Earth's forces to retaliate. As the fleet moved into position, Carrington stood at the helm of the Avenger, watching the space surrounding Earth grow darker and more menacing. Each ship in Earth's fleet was small in comparison to the Empire's, but they were determined. Carrington had chosen her best officers, the most experienced soldiers, and had placed them in positions where they could have the greatest impact. Every fleet commander had been briefed on their role, and Carrington trusted them implicitly. Meanwhile, Dr. Weber, the mastermind behind the signal, had stationed himself in the control room of the defense satellite, his team working feverishly to ensure everything was ready. The signal was powerful, but it had to be perfect. Any miscalculation, any minor flaw, could result in failure, and if the signal failed, humanity would be forced to fight an unwinnable war, one they would lose. "We're ready to transmit," Dr. Weber's voice crackled through the intercom, shaky but steady. "General, the signal is locked in. The moment the fleet crosses our target coordinates, we will send the pulse." Carrington's gaze flicked to the star map. The Empire's fleet was moving at an incredible pace. In just a few minutes they would be in range. The tension in her chest was unbearable, but there was no room for fear. Only action. "Do it," Carrington ordered. With a single command, the signal was released. The electromagnetic pulse shot through space, traveling at light speed toward the Empire's fleet. Carrington stood rigid, waiting for the inevitable feedback. The tension in the command center was palpable, the silence almost suffocating. Then came the first sign that it was working. "General, we're getting a reading," Lieutenant Harris said, his voice filled with awe. "The Empire's fleet, it's being affected. Their communications are scrambling. We've got them." "Second Lieutenant Bernie Swat," Lieutenant Harris responded. "Second Lieutenant." A surge of hope ran through Carrington. They had done it. For the first time in weeks, it felt as though they had a fighting chance. But just as quickly, that hope turned to dread. The Empire strikes back. The moment the signal hit, something unexpected occurred. Instead of the expected disarray within the Empire's fleet, the ships seemed to adapt with frightening speed. They began to reorient, their trajectories shifting as if they had been expecting some sort of disruption. Carrington's heart dropped as the star map flickered. The Empire's ships were adapting faster than they could respond. "We've lost control of their fleet," Lieutenant Harris said, panic creeping into his voice. "They've rerouted their systems. It's like they anticipated the signal." Carrington slammed her fist onto the command table. "No, we can't give up now. We have them on the ropes. Prepare to engage. We may not have their firepower, but we still have the element of surprise." "No intention of surprise, my friend. They are on the path, and I can see it." But the Empire was no ordinary opponent. Despite their technological superiority, they had underestimated humanity's ingenuity. What had begun as a flickering glimmer of hope was quickly turning into a brutal game of cat and mouse. The Empire was no longer simply invading Earth. They were actively retaliating, launching a counteroffensive that pushed Earth's forces back into a desperate defense. Carrington gritted her teeth. She knew their window was closing. The Empire was retaliating faster than she had anticipated, and now they had no choice but to face them head-on. "We won't give up," she said, her voice firm. "Not now, not ever." She watched as Earth's fleet, fighting with everything they had, began to push back against the Empire's assault. The signal had worked, just not in the way they had hoped, and despite the odds, humanity would not go quietly into the night. The battle for Earth had only just begun, and yet, in the midst of the chaos, the universe had unveiled its deepest, most terrifying secret. For years, humanity had thought they were alone in the galaxy. Now, they knew better. The Galactic Empire had not simply appeared out of nowhere. It had watched, waited, and studied Earth for decades, maybe longer. The signal wasn't just a message to the Empire. It was a message to Earth, too. A message that humanity would never forget. It was a discovery, but not one anyone could truly understand until it was too late. The future was unknown, but Earth had made its stand. It shone.